The Old West is more than a period in history. It is a mythology, a dream, and sometimes a nightmare. Cowboys, lowmen, outlaws, and gunslingers all became larger than life. Their tales were told around campfires, in diamond nobles, and later on Hollywood screens. But behind the myth, each figure was a real person who lived, fought, and ultimately died. Some died with a gun in their hand, others in quiet obscurity. The truth of their deaths often clashes with the legend. Tonight, we uncover the final moments of 12 legendary figures of the Old West and reveal how they really died. Our story begins with Wild Bill Hickok, one of the most famous gunslingers who ever lived. A Union scout, lawman, and gambler, Hickok's sharpshooting and dramatic flair made him a living legend. But in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, in 1876, his luck ran out. He sat in a saloon, playing poker, his back turned to the door. A drifter named Jack McCall crept up and shot him in the back of the head. The cards in his hand, aces and eights, became known forever as the dead man's hand. Hickok's death was sudden, brutal, and unworthy of his myth. The lesson of Hickok's story is clear. In the Old West, it wasn't always the fastest gun that survived, but the man who stayed alert. Next, we turn to Jesse James, the outlaw who became a folk hero. To some, he was a Robin Hood, stealing from banks and railroads. To others, he was a murderer and bandit. By the 1880s, he lived under an assumed name, desperate to hold his fading gang together. In 1882, betrayal came from within. Robert Ford, a young member of his gang, shot Jesse from behind while he adjusted a picture on the wall of his own home in St. Joseph, Missouri. Ford hoped to be celebrated as a hero, but instead he was scorned as the dirty little coward who shot Mr. Howard. Jesse's death reminds us that betrayal, not bullets in a fair fight, ended the reign of many Old West legends. Billy the Kid, the boy outlaw, was said to have killed 21 men, one for every year of his short life. Charming, reckless, and deadly, Billy became a symbol of rebellion, but in July 1881, Sheriff Pat Garrett tracked him down in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. In a darkened room, Garrett ambushed him and shot him through the chest. Billy fell instantly, though some claimed he lived on under another name. History records his life ending at 21, cut short in the shadows. Then comes Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, outlaws of the infamous Wild Bunch Gang. Known for their daring train robberies, they fled to South America when the West grew to civilize for their ways. For years, rumors swirled about their fate. Some said they died in Bolivia in 1908, gunned down in a fierce firefight with soldiers. Others claim Cassidy returned quietly to America, living under an alias until old age. The truth is uncertain. Their deaths, whether in Bolivia or not, remain shrouded in mystery, adding to their romantic outlaw image. Duck Holliday, gambler, dentist, and loyal friend of Wyatt Earp, lived with one foot in death for most of his life. Suffering from tuberculosis, he still managed to fight in the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. But Doc's end didn't come from a bullet. In 1887, in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, he lay in a hotel bed, coughing blood. Looking at his bare feet, he laughed, saying he always thought he'd die with his boots on. Moments later, death claimed him quietly. The irony was that the deadliest of gunslingers died not in battle, but from disease. Wyatt Earp, his famous partner, lived far beyond the Wild West. Unlike his contemporaries, he survived countless gunfights, vendettas, and adventures. He eventually settled in California, working in Hollywood as an advisor for Western films. In 1929, at the age of 80, Wyatt died peacefully in Los Angeles, far from the dust and blood of Tombstone. His quiet passing stunned those who remembered his violent days, proof that some gunslingers could outlast their own legend. The story of Calamity Jane is one of hardship and resilience, a frontierswoman, scout, and sometimes outlaw. Jane lived a rough life, often exaggerated in dime novels. She was close to Wild Bill Hickok and always claimed a special bond with him, but her end came not in glory, but in poverty. In 1903, in a mining camp in South Dakota, she died of pneumonia and alcoholism. She was buried next to Hickok, as if fate wanted her story tied forever to his. Another figure, Geronimo, the Apache warrior who fought relentlessly against U.S. and Mexican forces, died far from the battlefield. Captured and held as a prisoner of war, he spent his final years at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. In 1909, after falling from his horse and lying in the cold overnight, he developed pneumonia and died. His last words were a bitter regret that he should never have surrendered. Sitting Bull, the Lakota leader and holy man who inspired resistance at the Battle of Little Bighorn, also met a tragic end. In 1890, Indian police tried to arrest him during the Ghost Dance movement. A scuffle broke out, and Sitting Bull was shot in the head and chest. His death marked not just the end of a leader, but the silencing of a culture's spiritual strength at a time of despair. Buffalo Bill Cody, unlike most, turned his fame into entertainment. His Wild West shows toured the world, shaping the image of the frontier for generations. But even legends fade. In 1917, at the age of 70, Buffalo Bill died quietly of kidney failure in Denver. For a man who lived in the spotlight, his death was subdued, but his image remained immortalized in posters, books, and stories. Then there was John Wesley Hardin, one of the most violent outlaws of the West. He claimed to have killed 40 men, though history suggests fewer. After years in prison, he tried to live quietly as a lawyer. But in 1895, in El Paso, Texas, a feud with a local constable led to his sudden death. He was shot in the back of the head in a saloon, proving once again that in the Old West, danger always lurked in the shadows. Finally, we remember Bass Reeves, one of the greatest lawmen of the West, though his story was buried for years. A former slave-turned-deputy U.S. Marshal, Reeves arrested thousands of criminals and survived countless gunfights. Unlike most legends, he lived to old age, dying of kidney disease in 1910. His quiet, dignified passing was overshadowed by louder myths, but today he is celebrated as one of the truest heroes of the frontier. These 12 lives tell us something profound about the Old West. Death did not always come with the blaze of glory we imagine. It came in betrayal, in ambush, in disease, in old age. The reality of their death strips away the myth and leaves us with something more human. The Old West was not just a stage for heroes and villains. It was a place where men and women lived hard, fought hard, and faced death as it came sudden, violent, or slow. In their endings, we see not just the close of lives, but the fading of an entire era. The gunsmoke has long cleared. The trails have grown quiet, but the legends remain. And though the truth of how they died may differ from the stories we were told, their names will never be forgotten.